1. It was the summer of 98 or 99, and I was 13 years old, in the Sega Genesis section of the video game aisle of Blockbuster's Video, trying to work out if I had enough pocket money to get a 3-day rental on a game, and still have enough to buy at least 12 AA batteries. I never owned a Genesis, but the Christmas before my parents had gotten my brother and I a Nomad to share. Sega's handheld that could play Genesis games on 6 AA's for about 3 hours before running out of juice. So, here I am, crouched down at the bottom shelf, trying to guess which games had the least on-screen text. The display on the Nomad was terrible with text. When some middle-aged dude saunters up to me to ask, "Hey, does the tape version of Titanic show Kate Winslet's tits?" Now, there are 2 pieces of context I should provide before I continue. First, that over summers I volunteered at a local science museum that had a Blockbuster IMAX theater. Our uniform, which I was wearing, consisted of a collared polo shirt with the museum's logo and Blockbuster IMAX in embroidered yellow over the right side of the chest, as well as a belt and khakis. How this man saw the logo while I was squatting down in front of the bottom shelf is beyond me, but it was in the same location as the yellow Blockbuster's ticket logo on the video store employee shirts. Sorry, I haven't seen it. A lie, but what 13-year-old is comfortable talking about nude scenes with some skeezy old dude? Ain't that your job? Go ask your manager if you don't know. This was followed by a phlegmy equivalent of a kind of laugh. Oh, sorry, I don't work here, I'm just... You wearing a Blockbuster shirt in Blockbusters? Don't pee on my boots and tell me it's raining. Go get your manager. No, see, it's for the Science Museum. Manager! This was not shouted at me, but bellowed into the air like someone trying to summon security or hail a taxi. I flinched anyway. Sir, can we help you? Came 2 employees in their branded polo shirts. New guy here needs an attitude adjustment. I don't work here. He doesn't work here. The hell he doesn't. Why are you covering for him? You train him? That other critical piece of context. Blockbuster's polo shirts were bright royal blue. My uniform was a dark forest green. Not one of those aquamarines that someone with blue-green color blindness might have a hard time differentiating. Completely different saturation. Sir, he's not an employee, he's a customer. That's not our logo. That's not even our color. Bull. Swear to God, I don't work here. I may have started panicking a bit. I didn't grow up in a house with yelling, and this may have been one of the first times I was ever shouted at. Shut the hell up and let the grown-ups talk. Sir, please, we need you to... The French have an expression, l'esprit de l'escalier. The idea being you only think of the perfect thing to say once you've walked out the front door and are walking down the steps. I got a buddy who calls them jerk store moments. What I should have said was, I don't know this man, he came up to me asking about dirty movies. Still, I'm proud of the response 13-year-old me actually came up with. If I did work here, would I be immediately fired for calling a customer a jackass to their face? Absolutely. Fine, he's a jackass, now I definitely don't work here. Can I go home now? Yeah, kid, we'll mail you your last check. 2. My dad just retired, and we had his retirement party last night. A lot of his former and current employees as well as family were there. A few people got up and gave a speech, and though I never worked for him, I told this story from about 12 years ago. About 12 years ago, when I was in high school, I had the day off, so my dad invited me to go out to lunch with him the next day. Mom wouldn't be able to get off, so it was just going to be a daddy-daughter lunch date. The day of, just when I was going to get into the shower and get ready for the day, my dad calls and says something big has come up at work and we're going to have to postpone our lunch. But because this was a surprise event for him, he didn't bring anything to eat, so he asked me to stop by a Subway and grab him a sandwich and some chips and bring it to him at work. I was bummed, but said okay. Instead of the nice sweater and skirt combo I had planned on wearing, I put on a pair of old ripped jeans and a black t-shirt with a giant Nike logo across the front, as well as putting my hair into a messy ponytail under a black and red baseball cap. I picked up his food and drove off to his work. He owned and operated, it sounds weird to put those into past tense after all these years, a hardware garden store. I got there, went to his office, and saw him behind the glass on the phone, with lots of papers around him, and he looked frantic on his call, and shuffling through the papers. I knocked on the glass, held up the bag with his food, and when he saw me he gave me a thumbs up, and then jerked his thumb over his shoulder towards the employee break room. So I went there to put his food in the fridge. When I got there were 2 warehouse employees there, Tom and Dan, and they told me that their biggest supplier had suddenly and unexpectedly gone out of business that day. And Dad was trying to see if he could snag any leftover inventory they might still have, as well as looking for a new supplier. We also made some idle chit-chat before I put Dad's lunch in the fridge and walked out the door. This is when the main villain of the story stepped in, Karen. I got maybe 2 steps out of the door, but she grabbed my attention and asked where the doohickey was. At the time, I had no idea what a doohickey was, so I politely said, "I'm sorry, I don't work here. I'm just delivering food." She practically screamed,
"Why won't you help me?"
Then noticed the sign over the door that said employees only, and said,
"What were you doing in there if you don't work here?"
thinking she caught me or something. I said this is where I was told to bring the food, but I really don't work here, and I don't even know what a doohickey is. She then started berating me for not knowing what a doohickey was, and when I thought of Tom and Dan behind the door, surely one of them would know what a doohickey was and where to find it. But when I turned to go in and get one of them, she loudly shrieked,
"Why won't you help me? Don't bother your coworkers when you're right here!"
I don't know if it was because he was done on the phone or was just alerted by Karen's loud shrieking, but my dad came out of his office and asked what was going on. Karen quickly spoke up and said,
"I'm trying to find a doohickey and she won't help me."
Dad looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, but she's just delivering lunch. She probably doesn't even know what a doohickey is." I then told my dad that I tried to get Tom or Dan to come out and help her, as I had no idea what it was. Karen's response was to tell Dad,
"You should train the workers better."
Dad's response was to say, "Again, she doesn't work here, and she claimed she tried to get you help. Did she or did she not?"
"Why is everyone trying to cover for her?"
As far as I know, she had only talked to me and Dad, so I don't know who everyone was. Dad then told her doohickeys are on aisle 3, or maybe you can find one at Home Depot. He later told me that's the first time he ever suggested to a customer that they can go elsewhere, even if he had the item in stock and could get it there in a reasonable amount of time. He then told me what a doohickey was. Karen then stormed off to aisle 3, and later that evening, Dad told me she had bought one. Years later, when I was married and my husband and I got a house, Dad gave us a doohickey as a housewarming gift. I started laughing hysterically when I unwrapped it and I saw what it was. It was a light sensor for outdoor lights, so they automatically come on when it's dark enough. My husband thought there was something wrong with me because I was laughing like crazy and could barely get out, "Did you find it on aisle 3 or did you have to go to Home Depot?" So Dad is officially retired now. My older brother is taking over, and I know where to get a doohickey should I ever need one. 3. This guy just turned 21, about a year younger than me, who was 22. Had been frequenting the gas station where I work. At first he would come in with his girlfriend and things were fine. Until they started asking for things, a soda here, a donut there. They lived on the streets but seemed like decent kids, so I used my own money to give them a freebie. I let them know I would pay for it and that it was a one-time thing. They said okay, and we moved on from there. After a while, they kept coming by. They liked to talk, so when it was slow, they would stick around. At first it was fine. They had food stamps and would buy snacks. But after a week or so, they started asking for things again. I had to start telling them no, which seemed to go over well. I informed them that if they keep the cups they buy, the ones I had given them, that a refill was cheaper, and that I would be more likely to let them refill it no charge. This was during the summer and fall when it was a lot hotter outside. A few more weeks went by, and as they did, I learned more about this couple. I won't go into those details as it's their business, but For reasons, they decided to split up, and the girlfriend went back to her hometown. This made the guy frequent my store even more, telling me basically everything about the relationship, himself, and how his life is going. Now, I dealt with it at first. I listened and offered up advice. I try to be a good ear for my customers. Some of the people that come into my store have zero interaction with others outside of these moments. I take that into consideration and try to make them seem welcome. Anyways, he starts to hang around too long. I'm talking hours, walking in and out, interacting with my customers. Nicely, not rudely, but it was still awkward for a lot of them to have some random guy just stand there and watch. He would buy something every now and then, ask for something every now and then. I started to make excuses by then. I told him I had gotten in trouble for customers loitering without buying anything. This worked for a short time. He would make a point to buy things and then only stick around for a short time. After a bit, he just kept coming in, talking and complaining about his circumstances. I noticed that when I gave him advice he didn't want to hear, he would change the subject and be quick to leave. I started to use that to my advantage and be more firm with him on things. I stopped giving him cups and I told him that I liked the little downtime I would get when no one is here. I told him that I felt like I couldn't enjoy my time with him here throughout most of my shift, and that it's very hard to take a break working my shift alone. I made it clear that it wasn't personal, and that he needed to lessen his time here. He often goes into tirades about not having work, money, food, etc. So today, when I reminded him that it's Sunday and I'd like to have time to myself where I can clean or just relax, he mentioned the fact that, "Everywhere I go, I feel like people just tell me to leave, but I don't care, and I'll go. I understand." I told him again that it wasn't personal, and that I've mentioned before that Sunday is the only slow day I get during the week. He was about to say something back when a customer came in, so instead he walked out. I watched him leave, and as he left, he threw away the last cup I gave him, again right in front of me. Now, as I said before, I've put up with him for a good couple of months now. I've helped him out every now and then with a snack or drink. I let him stick around and get things off his chest. He has no motivation to get a job. He constantly complains about not being able to get one, and I've had 3 different people offer to help him get a position where they work, and he turns them down. He has straight up told me about his panhandling habits and how he feels like it's easier at this point. And the money he gets from it goes towards the weed he likes to brag about having. Long story short, if you give a mouse a cookie, they will ask you for a glass of milk. Don't give the mouse a cookie. It's not worth it. 4. Background. I'm a late 30s female Australian. This story pertains to a family friend called Bunty. My father and Bunty went to university together and subsequently played football and cricket together. They both married around the same time, and his daughters are both within 2 years of myself. So Bunty, his wife, and 2 kids have been part of our family life since childhood. Despite moving interstate back in the late 90s, we always had a close family-friend relationship, which included family holidays together and frequent visits to each other's houses when I was growing up, no matter where we lived. Examples of their behavior. He's been stingy his entire life. He will bring the worst bottle of wine to the party, drink all your good wine, and have the audacity to take his bad wine home. Other times he's turned up to my parents' house to stay for the weekend, a 7 or 8 hour drive between towns, for a footy match with the whole family and eat and drink them out of home. He would of course host my parents in their town just as much. However, every time, Bunty would insist on going out for dinner, then to only forensically go over the bill. Nothing wrong at all with this, in fact it sounds fair, except for the fact that when he arrives at my parents' house, after a day where both my parents worked, all he would ask, loudly on arrival, "What delicious food have you made for us tonight?" When my mum said, "No, I am tired, and this time we can just go out, or get some takeaway," he had a mini tantrum. There was never a time where he was told to expect a hot meal, so no idea where that entitlement came from. My mother isn't even a very good cook. Bunty's karma. The prelude. So, Bunty and his wife went on a trip to Bali with another couple. The male in this third couple is a mutual friend of Dad and Bunty's from uni and sport also. Bunty decides that the accommodation that everyone else had was too expensive, so he booked the cheapest dive, joking that he doesn't need to pay for a decent hotel, as he can get in with the other two couples' keys. They didn't let that happen after the second day, when he was racking up all of his drinks to their respective rooms. He even chewed through their prepaid $100 data that Mum had bought and stupidly gave him the password for her hotspot. She keeps it on for her tablet and Dad's phone. He said it was an emergency. He used it all in one night and claimed he had no idea how. He had IT in his government background and was not at all an idiot to data use. Anyway, rinse and repeat, and the next day with the other couple, so he had been cut off from the others for any more freeloading. They won't let him sneak into the resort anymore, so the next day he needs a new activity to fill the day. Bunty's karma. The sweet revenge. Bunty is unable to join the others drinking and getting hotel massages the next day after the morning activities he participated in, the ones he thought were value for money anyway. He decided to go to a rub and tug. In Australia, we also like to call it happy endings. In true cheapo fashion, Bunty went to the operator with the cheapest rates, maybe $2 Australian. While he is in there, they take his wallet and proceed to rack up a $23,000 Australian credit card bill. He has no idea and goes back as he was too stingy to even put international roaming for phone calls, let alone data. The group go to dinner and his card is declined. They all laugh and think it is just him being him, trying to use an old card because he isn't and has never been poor. They tell him his card has been declined multiple times and hand over the restaurant phone for him to call the bank. He is informed of the jet skis, scooters, and other gear that was purchased, and that his 20,000 credit limit was exceeded by 3,000. Anyway, he goes back and uses the restaurant Wi-Fi and transfers some cash quietly, so there weren't any alarms raised. He was rather quiet, and they thought he was sulking about being excluded from the hotel. His wife was still let in under the radar, as it wasn't her fault he refused to pay for the hotel, and his wife had been undergoing chemo before the trip, so the others insisted she be pampered, and they all shouted her all the hotel services legitimately. My mum refuses to scam anyone or anywhere, to the point she will pay back on behalf of others if she can, when people are scammed and can't afford it. Bunty, the boy who cried wolf. Bunty decides to stay at the bar as he needed the free Wi-Fi to sort out a couple of small financial things, nothing serious, and that he will meet his wife back at their crappy accommodation. It was on the way for the other four to walk her there. Anyway, he ends up in the hotel lobby of where my parents and the other couple are, demanding he could get lift access to the floor my parents were on, as he needed internet and a phone. Mum and Dad were given a message along the lines of, "Some guy I've seen you with said come downstairs, he needs your internet and phone." Whatever the exact words were, it wasn't even close to eliciting any sympathy response, so they ignored it. He ended up at a bar with free Wi-Fi, just to email my dad to tell him what happened, and if he could let him in to use their phone and internet. It is after 1 a.m. Why didn't he just go buy a SIM card? He still had a perfectly fine debit card, he just refused to pay for internet or phone use overseas, even when scammed 20,000 plus. FYI, being a credit card, he got the money within a month, which is expected in our country anyway. 5. This is one of my favorite stories to tell. Hope you enjoy for the entertainment value. What is the underlying entitlement? The thrill of harassing a retail worker? Just being a dick because you can? Seeing what one can get for less, or free? This also has a bit of petty revenge mingled in from a retail hell standpoint. Story is now about 15 years old, so the specific details and prices are quite faded at this point, and are made up, but close enough. My family and I were wrapping up a week-long trip to Disney World, staying at the boardwalk. Teenage kids were in the park, my parents, husband and I were in the room doing laundry and packing up for the flight home the next day. I have yet to treat myself this trip and haven't had any ice cream. Husband agrees for the need, so two of us head down to the boardwalk sweet shop. As luck would have it, The store was thankfully not crowded, it was fairly late, with one couple in line in front of us already being helped, and husband and I queue up behind them. There are 3 employees working behind the counter, and all seem to be totally preoccupied by the couple in front. This is a mid-40s white American man and woman, both well-groomed, neatly dressed in what I would describe as preppy, with polos, sweaters tied around necks, boat shoes. The guy was wearing a Boston Red Sox hat. She has a nice handbag. Definitely seem to be vacationers like us. We'll call them Karen and Ken for ease of storytelling. I notice that Ken is a bit agitated and is shuffling about nervously, looking from Karen, then back to me, then to the store employees and back again. It's at this point I start to pay attention to the conversation in front of me. Karen is trying to negotiate the price of an ice cream cone in Disney World. I mean, if you need to get a discount on a dessert, maybe you don't go to Disney? We certainly aren't wealthy and saved for the trip, but 25 cents off an ice cream cone isn't life-changing in these circumstances.
How much for a cone with 1 scoop?
Still $3.50.
What about $3.25?
No. Ken shifts stance repeatedly.
If I get 2 scoops, can I get it at the same price?
No, it would be more. Ken glances back awkwardly.
What about 1 scoop in a cup?
Still $3.50.
Can I get it for $2.50?
It's at this point I realize this has been going on for a while, way before we got there, and has continued for a good 5 minutes since we arrived. All 3 employees are just staring at Karen and her antics, quite like a deer caught in headlights. Ken looks like he's going to stroke. My husband at this point bails on me. He, zero patience, doesn't need ice cream that badly, and has said so before leaving. Me, on the other hand, am stubborn and completely fascinated by people watching and relationship dynamics. The laundry can wait, and I really wanted ice cream. Ken seems to be out of his league. He's more geek and less handsome than she is pretty. What's the basis of this relationship? Is it more about marrying for money or status versus love or affection? What's so important about a discount? There doesn't appear to be a financial need. I mean, I'm not averse to helping out when warranted or appreciated. Why the hard sell? So many questions. Finally, one of the employees, oldest of the 3 males, manager or owner, finally snaps out of the Karen show trance and realizes there is another customer to ask me what I want. The other 2 employees are still trying to serve Karen and Ken, and I have to step between them to be handed my cone, as they are blocking the register area. I am about a foot away from Karen. Thank you. How much? For you, no charge. Karen snaps her head around angrily to stare in my face. I take a long lick of ice cream. Karen is seething. Thank you so much. Entitlement should never get you a free ice cream, but sometimes kindness, patience, and a bit of stubbornness will. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 168. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button, and share the video with friends and family. If you want to get these videos early, all at once on Monday, then you can do that by supporting me on my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. You'll also find a link there to the Hellfreezer merchandise store on Teespring, as well as a link to the Hellfreezer Discord. And if you really like today's video, then you can leave a tip by clicking on the heart with a $sign underneath. But you don't have to do that, although I do very much appreciate it. Okay, no other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, and this one comes thanks to Newcomb on the Discord, is would you want to live in Hollywood? And if you do, are you happy to stay there? Personally speaking, I don't think I'd want to live there. I mean, I'd be happy to visit if I was working on a project or something. But no, I don't think I'd want to live there. I like my home. I like living in Scotland. I used to have dreams of living in the States when I was younger, but I think as I've gotten older, I've really begun to appreciate just how good we have it here in Scotland. But let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And this was, if you could no longer make buildings out of wood and concrete, what would you make them out of? And it came from Idiots in the Wild 167. And today's answer comes from Nova Brilliant. Straw bale house. It's a thing, and they look really cool. Solid construction, and great for keeping the home at a good temperature. Thank you very much for your interesting answer, Nova Brilliant. And I think I've heard of that idea before. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.